As the first ever champions of women's and girls cricket, Metrobank, in partnership with ECB, have launched the Metrobank Girls in Cricket Fund with the ambition of tripling the number of girls' cricket teams by the end of 2026. Metrobank want to give more women and girls the confidence to thrive on and off the field, developing skills that will help them for life. By recruiting, educating and supporting both new and existing volunteers and coaches, Metrobank will be creating powerful role models who will inspire women and girls in their communities. Find out more and head to metrobankonline.co.uk/cricket to champion the future. Hello and welcome to the Wisden Women's Cricket Weekly podcast. This episode is chiefly about wicketkeeping, what separates the very good from the great, and in women's cricket, with a greater potential for standing up to the stumps for longer, is there room for a purely specialist keeper who bats down the order? You'll hear an interview Katya did with Rhianna Southby, the Vipers and Southern Brave keeper who turned heads last summer. Later in the show, you'll also hear from Winfield-Hill on the art of keeping, what made Sarah Taylor so good, etc., etc. That's later on, but first, me and Ben Gardner will react to the England ODI squad that just dropped for the series against New Zealand. Ben, from an England point of view, there are no changes whatsoever, which is a sign of a settled team.
Yeah, I mean, Sophia Dunkley's sort of technically back, but she was also basically kicking around towards the end of that Pakistan series anyway. And it is nice that, it's nice that they're settled. I wouldn't expect Dunkley to come back into the 11. And it's also nice that when she was sort of out of that setup at the start of the summer, she did show that she is kind of the best player not in there. She's the leading Rachel Flint trophy run scorer.
She's not back by default. She's back because she's been scoring lots of runs.
Exactly, yeah. She made a brilliant 130 in a chase. I mean, her side just lost, but it's one of the innings of the competition so far. And, it's not as if this is, she's been in and out of the side and set up a little bit, but it's not as if this is last chance at all. She's in her mid-20s, and it's not unusual for players to kind of crack it around this time. I think Tammy Beaumont was kind of around now when she was the same age that Dunkley is, that she kind of got world class basically. And I really like Dunkley. I wouldn't be surprised if she did something similar. The only thing is there are just that like greater number of players who are coming up through the ranks. So, I mean, at some point she will have to crack it if she wants to keep getting picked in squads. But yeah, just nice to see her back, I guess.
New Zealand announced a squad of their own a couple of weeks ago. No Leah Tahuhu. She's back in New Zealand on maternity leave. They do have Lauren Down back, who herself is just back from maternity leave. Where are New Zealand at as a side? It feels like they haven't been as prominent a presence at the latter stages of major tournaments over the last couple of years.
Yeah, and it's been quite stark actually, because every World Cup, that's one day World Cup from the very first up until 2013, they were in the top four, and then they haven't made the top four at either of the last two events. And the same is pretty much true of the T20 World Cup, in which they were runners up at the first two, they made semi-finals of two of the next three, and again haven't got to the knockouts in three since then. So there has been a drop off, and I guess the worry as well is that they are still significantly dependent on. I mean, they've got three main batters basically, which is Amelia Kerr, who's young, will be around for ages basically, so that's fine. She's sort of locked in, but also Susie Bates and Sophie Devine, and they're both kind of mid-30s. I don't think there's any suggestion that they're going to, be departing straight away. But, who knows how a bad tournament, or, they win a tournament, want to go out on a high, and that's at some point they will go, and it's not exactly clear who's going to be the player who comes in. I mean, Lauren Down being back is a bit of a plus. You look at her record overall and it doesn't stand out, but there were signs just before she went on maternity leave that maybe she was just on the upswing. She made a brilliant half century against India in a win against them. Maddie Green is the other one who is not a young player by any means. She's 31, I think, but she has also kicked on to take on a bit more of the burden. But yeah, they're a side who
it's not just the major tournaments, right? It's bilateral series against sides you'd think they dominate, but actually haven't.
Yeah, just for example, I mean, obviously we'd remember the England series where England were pretty comfortable victors in both the T20s and the one-day series, but against Pakistan, who England just obviously beat quite comfortably. New Zealand, they lost the T20I series against them, and even in the ODIs, they won the first very comfortably, and then the second was a one-wicket win for New Zealand, which sealed the series, and the third was a tie, which Pakistan won in the Super Over. So actually, it's possible that there's kind of occupy a weird mid-tier that maybe you put West Indies and South Africa in there as well, but kind of you sort of assume that they'll be maybe there and thereabouts challenging for semi-final spots, but also they're not in that England, India, Australia tier, if it's fair to put them in the same tier, or if Australia are their own tier at the top. But maybe New Zealand are even sort of slipping down in that tier more towards the Pakistan and Sri Lanka as they catch up, rather than up towards the England tier. So this will be an important series for them, just to see if they can maybe find who those new players are. But it's not really clear where that's coming from at the moment, I think.
Well, here is Lauren on the art of wicketkeeping, and then after that, you'll hear from Katya and Rhianna Southby. So English cricket, as long as you go back, has always been blessed with world-class wicket-keeping talent. In the women's game, England for years first had Sarah Taylor, maybe the most natural keeper in the world game at the time. Then Amy Jones has been similarly brilliant behind the stumps. Lauren, you played a lot of cricket with Jones and Taylor. What made Sarah Taylor in particular so good behind the stumps?
I think it's a really good question, because they're two very different keepers. Sarah Taylor almost did the extraordinary, and was Instagram reels would going off when she'd be behind the stump. She was very flair. I think she was probably all natural ability. I think it's a lot like how she was as a batter. And their keeping was similar. She probably wasn't hugely sort of technical, and didn't really focus her work on, hugely technical. She's probably more of just like a feel and instinctive keeper. But yeah, she did some remarkable things, and for me, she probably got the stuff that you should never get. The catches, or I remember the Jodie Fields one off the reverse. She sort of she took those speckies that you think, if they go down, you're almost not even classing it as a chance. And that's where she was brilliant. I think as well, because of the nature of how she was as a person, she was a real energy driver as well. She sort of wanted the ball fizzing in and around the batter, in and into her gloves. She wanted to be in on the action all the time, which is very different to Amy Jones. Completely different characters. I think Jonesy technically is the best keeper in the world, hands down, in my opinion. She probably just makes it look really simple and really easy because she's that good. She's not somebody that has the same, I guess, want and desire to do the flair things, but she makes very few mistakes. And she sort of shows her energy in different ways to Sarah. Sarah was very extrovert, sort of on the field, whereas Amy's a lot more sort of quietly goes about her business. But I think she's an exceptional keeper. She's arguably, I think for years her and Sarah got compared. But if you look at sort of percentages taken versus opportunities, there's very little between them, and if not, Jonesy probably even more consistent than maybe what Sarah was.
Yeah, it's really interesting how people judge wicketkeepers, especially nowadays with social media, by the incredible catches or incredible somethings they take, but actually that's not always the bread and butter of the job, right? Even the very best keepers maybe only produce those moments a couple of times a year. With your batting hat on, how much of a difference does it make when you're batting, you're facing seam, and there's just a world-class keeper behind the stumps, as you described Taylor, making a lot of noise, but also you sort of know that if you get forward and you drag your feet out the crease, you're in trouble?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's probably twofold. There's the actual skill element of it, which, if you're playing spin or you're sweeping or whatever, if you're coming up against the leg spinner and they're trying to do you on the outside edge, that if you've got a world-class keeper behind, you can absolutely make no error in terms of, your footwork, if you're going to use your feet, or dragging your back leg, if you're sweeping, whatever it might be. And I think the other side of it is probably the presence and the energy that's created through a wicket keeper. And I think somebody like Sarah, somebody like Alyssa Healy, there's a lot of chat, a lot of energy, a lot of noise. And in some ways, some players like that, it almost gets their beans going, where you've got a keeper trying to get under your skin. And in other ways, it's very distracting, and it's almost taking your focus away from what you're trying to do out there in the middle. So I think there's definitely two parts to it. There's obviously the skill bit, but there's also the sort of the energy and the atmosphere, I guess, and the presence that a keeper creates.
What are you like behind the sticks? Are you very annoying? Do you like to have a chat with the
I would
batter?
say I'm an atmosphere energy kind of girl. Probably because I'm not in the same class category as Sarah and Jonesy, in terms of their actual skill sets. But no, it's a good point. But I sort of see myself as that's like a bit of a contribution to the team as well, isn't it? With the energy that you create, sorting out angles, making sure you got all the troops in the right place. I do think there's more to it than just catching balls and taking dismissals. And I think sometimes that side of the game is understated a little bit as well.
We've got an interview with Rhianna Southby coming up in a few minutes, and she's played England A recently and sort of rose to attention last summer, almost playing as a specialist keeper in the 100. There was a game where Sky did a feature on her before a game, bigging up her wicket-keeping skills. And in the game following that segment, I think she took 2 or 3 stumpings and was named player of the match purely based off her keeping. Would you say that she's got the potential to be in the same sort of bracket as Taylor and Jones?
She does Sky interviews before each game, probably, yeah. She obviously likes the occasion. Yeah, I think so. I think pound for pound as a wicket keeper, I think she's one of the best keepers in the country. I think, like we said at the start, is England have got a bit of a rich history and heritage of producing, awesome wicket keepers. Ellie Threlkeld's another one that's obviously at Lancs that could easily, get into lots of teams as a wicket keeper. But yeah, Rhianna Southby, she's a quality key. I think she's exceptional stood up to the stumps. And I think you look at the women's game, and how, particularly say back end in white ball cricket, you've got a lot of bowlers, even with your paces, they're bowling a lot of off pace deliveries, keepers stood up. And your spinners through the middle. The actual amount of time that you stood back in a women's game is not that long, and there's not that many bowlers in the world that you stay back for that long. But I do think she's a fantastic keeper, particularly up to the stumps. So almost like she's like a little pocket rocket. Like she just moves so well, and she's obviously quite small in stature. But she just makes things look very easy. And she tidies up a lot, in terms of those sort of dismissals where, say, for example, he caught down leg side with the keeper stood up. A lot of keepers don't really get anything on that, or if they do, it might sort of get a bit of a glove on it and it goes for leg buys or whatever. It's those sort of dismissals that she sort of owns, and particularly up to the stumps. As I said, she's very impressive.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one to talk about because players don't aspire to be specialist keepers on the team sheet, right? Keepers want to bat higher up in the order, but Southby at this stage in her career has been in a position where she's been picked to keep and bat as low as 9 or 10. Do you think there's more space in the women's game for specialist keepers? Because, as you say, you have more overs where the keeper could stand up to stumps. I mean, even just thinking about the England T20 side at the moment, if you've got the 3 spinners, that's 12 overs of spin. And if you've got someone as good as Southby potentially down the line, behind the stumps, who's capable of standing up to the seamers, and you've got a couple of all-rounders in the top 6 as well, there is space potentially for a player like Southby.
Yeah, I think so. Especially like you look at that England team, the 3 best bowlers in the team are the 3 spinners. So like, like you're saying there, a large chunk of the overs and the wicket opportunities come from the spinners with the keeper stood up. I think the other thing is as well, it's probably not a blanket thing where it all depends on the makeup of your team. I think what we've seen a lot in recent times is, especially in white ball cricket, is that you sort of want your keeper in your top 5 or 6 because it gives real good balance to the side. You can play that extra batter or extra bowler at sort of 7. But it depends on, like you say, what the makeup of your team is. If your top 5's got 4 all-rounders in it, then I don't see why you can't have a specialist keeper. I actually think Rhianna Southby's batting is really decent. I think she's probably just in a spot where the team she's in currently, she can't sort of get into that top 7. But who's to say as well that won't come on, in a year or two's time, whether she can sort of make her way up to like a 6-7 role. that adds huge value to a team. But I think the other thing is as well is how much Test cricket may or may not get played in the future. I definitely think having a specialist, your best keeper available, from whether it's Amy Jones or whether that's somebody further down the line or whatever, is crucial in red ball cricket. Because when those opportunities come, you absolutely need to take them, because your bowlers might be toiling away for another 2 hours before something else comes through. But I think it all depends on the makeup of your team. You see, like Rhianna Southby at Vipers, she's low in the batting order, she's low at Southern Brave. But just the fact that she got recognition and got player of the match shows in that sense how important that role is, even if she hasn't got out to the middle with the bat.
Well, here is that chat Katya had with Southby.
So how did you first get into keeping?
So I was with the Surrey under-11s at the time. We didn't have a keeper in the age group, and I met this man called Jeremy Greaves, and he just lined us all up in a hall and was like, right, everyone, like, we don't have a keeper for the year, so gonna need to find one. So yeah, just lined up, did a bit of catching and stuff, and he pulled me aside at the end of the session and he said, look, if you want to be one of the best keepers in the country, then I'll get you there.
Just like that?
Yeah, just like that. And I've worked with him ever since.
Really?
Yeah, still work with him now.
So he's been a really important person on your kind of journey?
100%, yeah. I owe him a lot.
Really?
Yeah, definitely.
So was there never any kind of like, hang on, I could get hurt here? Because on the face of it, if you're standing behind the stumps with a bat waving around your head and someone trying to bowl as fast as they can at you, it's not really.
Yeah, I think you definitely have to have a little bit of a screw loose, I would say. You have to be a little bit crazy at times, but I think that's actually part of it that I love. You have to be brave. And there is parts of it that you do learn to be brave and just get used to doing it. But I also think you have to kind of go into it knowing, at some point I'm going to have to stand up to quick bowlers and stuff, and just getting used to that. I think there is part of it that you do have to kind of already have that in you, and I think I did. Like, I played football when I was younger. I was a centre back. I'm very small. So it was just the fact that I knew I was going to get run into at times, potentially hurt, but like I was kind of okay with that. I just love doing it.
Yeah, and you said that they lined you up and did loads of catches and to see who was kind of like the most aptitude to it. Do you think it's something you have to have within you, that you have those natural attributes of being quite small, quite quick with your hands, or is it something you can learn? I think there's elements of it that are natural talent that you kind of have like already in you, but I also don't think that it's not possible to not learn it. I think being small can help, but then at the same time, Amy Jones, Sarah Taylor, both quite tall keepers. Ben Folkes, probably one of the best in the world at the moment, tall keeper. So I don't think like height matters too much. I don't think it's hindered me being small, but I think there's parts of it that are natural, but I think a lot of it you can learn with like drilling and just like catching balls constantly and kind of finding out your own way of doing it. And on the technical aspects of it, what have you kind of had to work on most to drill into yourself? I think for me it was just making sure that like my timing of catching balls and I'm picking them up off the bounce and just stuff like that, making sure that my head and my hands work together. Something I've actually had to work on recently is making sure that my hands aren't too quick, because at times that can get me in a bit of trouble, almost trying to catch the ball and take it back to the stumps before I've caught it, so potentially like fumbling. So making sure I've got the ball in my hand to then take it back to the stumps. I keep being told I'm quick enough anyway, so I don't need to rush. That's kind of something that's been a recent thing that I'm still kind of working on, while still trying to keep the top speed that I've got. I have like a technical aspect of my game is that I try and keep my fingers on the floor for as long as possible. I know if I'm doing that and I'm catching balls well, I know I'm in a really good place to carry on as a hopefully well for the rest of the game. And if you're standing up the stumps to a seamer and you've got the bat waving around your head, someone's rolling in, what is your kind of process from the moment the bowler starts running in to taking that ball in your hands and seeing it like off the edge, for example, if someone's picked it into your hands? Yeah, I think it sounds weird even if they've hit it, but just ignoring the batter as much as you can.
I try and keep my hands as close to the line of the stumps as I can, obviously without going in front of them, because that would be a no ball. To try and kind of like minimalise that angle as much as I can. The further your hands go back, the more the angle of the ball coming off the bat would be. So it's potentially going further away from me. Mm-hmm. So if I cut the angle off as close to that line as I can, hopefully the ball won't deviate as much. Mm-hmm. And then just trying to ignore the batters there and hoping that I've got myself into the best position I can to then hopefully like take the edge. You just have to let like your natural reactions kind of kick in at some points to make sure that you know, you're in the right position.
Yeah, and we saw with you last season, and we've seen like previously when Sarah Taylor's done something amazing, or Ben Folkes in the men's game when he's done something amazing, those videos tend to go viral.
Yeah.
Do you find that helpful or uncomfortable, or is it rewarding? How do you find it when that happens?
I wouldn't say it's not uncomfortable. I back my skill set. I back I do enough to kind of you know, make sure that I'm in a good place on the pitch, whether someone's like filming me doing like my practice or not. I've become quite used to a camera being there in training and stuff so it doesn't really bother me. Like, it's nice to get recognition for, you know, working hard behind the scenes, but at the same time, like, I'd be working hard whether there'd be a camera there or not. So I don't mind it. But like, it is nice to kind of, you know, get nice messages to say like, oh, I'm showing this to my son or daughter, like, we're giving this a go. I'm like, that's great. And like, I do love interacting with people like that. Like, I wish I had something like that growing up, but I guess like social media and stuff wasn't as big then.
Yeah, I guess people have this kind of fascination with keepers when they see them doing something amazing because they wouldn't really want to do it themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think like my mum sometimes watches it back and she's like, oh. She's like, where's the rest of your pads? I'm like, Mum, I promise I've got them on.
Yeah. Have you ever picked up an injury behind the stumps or?
Not that I'm fully aware of. I think I've broken a couple of fingers that I do just kind of soldier on, and I've got one that's quite bad, that you just kind of tape up and hope that you don't get hit.
Yeah.
And just to kind of power on. But thankfully, no. Hopefully it stays that way.
Yeah.
Touch wood.
I guess there's that viral picture of like Andy Flower's hands.
Yeah.
Not sure I'd want that.
Yeah, no, luckily like my hands don't look like that, which is great. Still young, only 23, but yeah, if I can get out at the end of my career with my hands looking pretty similar to they are now, I think I've done all right.
Yeah, and I guess there's always kind of a discussion about specialist keeper versus keeper bat as well. Do you find that frustrating that your batting kind of comes into the conversation and where you're batting in the order?
It has at times, 100%, because I think I work just as hard on my primary skill, which is keeping, as potentially an opening bowler would or an opening batter would. I'm really, really fortunate to work with Charlotte Edwards. The fact that she kind of appreciates the specialist keeper and kind of like what I can bring to the side. When I moved here from the South East Stars, one of the first things she said to me was, you're going to win us games with the gloves. And like, that's something that she said that I've done, kind of same with the 100. So it does frustrate me at times when it comes into it, but I also understand that not all coaches are the same. I'm just very fortunate to be in the position I am with someone as open, as understanding as Lottie.
How do you see the role of like the kind of keeper, specialist keeper, evolving as the women's game evolves more and keeps on going?
I think there's definitely room for it in the game. I think that's probably one of the best things that came out of last year, was the fact that people were looking at me and like having those conversations. It wasn't just oh well, actually she's batting at 9, 10, 11, like not interested. I think it has kind of come back into it. So I definitely think there is room for it, and those conversations are now being had.
Yeah, and I guess standing up to the seniors is such a kind of specialist skill that to have something like that really does make the difference in a side if you can do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think so, but I'm probably biased. I mean, it's a lot of fun, but yeah, I think it definitely makes a difference. You know, just I think if you think about someone just standing close to you, it can make you feel uncomfortable at times, and I think that's a lot of the time that's just what I'm trying to do. It's just trying to make him aware that I'm there, potentially take the first ball and take the stumps, just to kind of say, I'm here.
Yeah.
Can sometimes contain batters, you know, kind of keep them in their box, as we would say. Just trying to make a difference that way. It could potentially be a 1%er, could potentially be a 10%er, but I'll take what I can get.
Yeah.
Makes a difference.
A lot of chat, or?
I'm not a massive sledger. I'm more of I'm just gonna chat and kind of keep myself busy. can get distracted quite easily. So I like to just, keep myself ticking over, just making sure I'm encouraging the bowler, encouraging people, just having a little look at the field and making sure the captain's okay. And normally chatting to Gads at slip. But no, I'm not a massive sledger, just like a chat in general.
Yeah. And how do you see yourself, like, if you could have an ideal next couple of years in your career, because you said you're only 23, how would you see that going for you?
I love where I'm at the moment. I feel very, very fortunate to be able to be a professional cricketer and have a career in the game. I'd love for that to continue how it has. I'd love to get better. Like I still think I can get better behind the stumps. I'm still hopefully getting better with the bat. I had a good winter away with the bat. I've been away with England A, so I'd like to stay, kind of in that area and, potentially get a look in the senior side at some point. But yeah, again, I love my career. I'm just happy playing cricket and, like being able to win trophies and stuff like that. I really hope that continues because I genuinely love it. I'm so passionate about it.
That's great. And thinking about like expansion as well, there's the WPL now that's possibly going to expand to more teams in the future. Thinking about, we've talked about seamers, but keeping to spinners as well on Indian pitches, that could be a really specialist kind of avenue to go down as well, I guess.
Yeah. I've been out to Mumbai twice with England A. Well, once with England Academy and once with England A. I've just been recently actually in November/December, and every single time you go there, it feels like a different experience. It's just nothing can prepare you for it, I don't think. So you kind of just again like learning on the job, which again I love because I want to get better. But yeah, so I think it's something I definitely love to do more of. So if like franchise cricket is still on the rise, like I would really love to be involved in more stuff. Obviously the 100's great. It's one of the best competitions I've been involved in. But I'd love to potentially branch out and do some more stuff in Australia or India again.
But I guess down here as well, having people like Charlie Dean and Lauren Bell and Freya Davies in the next to keep you, that must be pretty good.
Yeah, to be fair, we actually don't really do a lot of keeping to bowlers in training, which is really strange. It normally comes kind of like at the end of the winter. We'll do a little bit in scenarios and stuff. And then your warm-up games is kind of where you're getting used to it, but that's when you just kind of have to make sure that like the drills you're doing are relevant. So something we did last winter, because obviously I've been away over the whole summer, over the whole winter. Something we did last winter was just getting like swing balls and stuff to kind of like prepare you for standing up to that or standing back to that. Saying that you've got balls that kind of like will really rag off of like a little piece of mat. So just making sure that your drills are relevant to what you're potentially going to face outside.
What kind of drills do you find most helpful for you?
Honestly, I love working with tennis balls. And it might sound really simple, but for me, because I mentioned earlier about my hands being a little bit too quick at times, I love to just be able to catch the ball, feel the ball, making sure I'm taking it back to the stumps, not rushing. If you rush with a tennis ball, you don't catch it properly, you're going to drop it. With a cricket ball, you can get away with it. So making sure I'm doing loads and loads of tennis ball drills. I do it before every single game. Get a batter in front with like a flexi stump or something to try and get some snicks. Do some leg side work with it as well. I think that's great. Other than that, just even something simple as having someone throw a cricket ball with a batter in front of you, just getting used to having something else there. Even though in my head I'm saying the bat's not there, it does make a difference. So just making sure that I'm doing the basics right over and over and over again. Another simple one is just having some cones down, just trying to hit the cones, like big deflections off that. So much fun. You'll get hit a few times, but that's okay. With keeping, I love just mixing it up. Keep it simple, but just keep mixing it up. Just keep exploring different avenues, and also it is okay to drop balls sometimes.
Yeah, it almost strikes me as like 1%ers almost. Of like improving your game, that little 1%.
Yeah,
so you can
definitely.
That ball
100%. If you can increase your catching range by that much, like an inch, like it makes so much of a difference. Like that could be the difference between you catching an edge, dropping an edge, or one that's nipped off the seam. You don't really want 4 byes or 4 wides or anything like that. So I think it comes down to being more than 1%ers in the end.
The Metrobank Girls in Cricket Fund, in collaboration with the ECB, will support the people who make women's and girls' cricket happen. Help us triple the number of girls' cricket teams by 2026 by becoming a volunteer or coach. Go to metrobankonline.co.uk/cricket to champion the future.